If you don't know this about me, there are a few TV shows that I really appreciate. The Office, a couple of them that I grew up with over the years. One of my favorite shows recently has been Ted Lasso. I know it's a new season coming out, and the jury's still out on it. I don't know if it's going to be good yet, but the first three seasons I thought were fantastic. If you don't know Ted Lasso, first of all, if you watch it. It's very British. It's very dry. It's very straightforward. The language is rough to say the least, but I like that. And it's a fun show. But there's sometimes through shows like this that there are moments in culture where I think there's goods and there's some lessons that kind of break through. And there's one in particular. If you don't know the show, the premise of the show is that a college football coach from Kansas in the United States, country bumpkin, really, really optimistic kind of guy, is dropped into the Premier League in England, coaching a soccer team. There is no it is meant to be kind of going to a completely different planet, different sport, different everything. His optimism is disgusting during the course of the show, and he gets hit with this realism and pessimism of England, which is just really, really funny, and it lends itself to a lot of really interesting moments. There is a spot though in the show that some of the characters are really fun and interesting. He's got an assistant coach that comes with him that is an absolute nut, that is like a drug addict, does all kind of crazy stuff. And then he's also got another guy that is that's another assistant coach who is like a team manager and is promoted up the ranks. Well, during the course of the show, they have this kind of falling out. And there's this kind of back and forth and this little rivalry that works its way in, and I don't want to give it away, but there ends up being this massive riff. And Ted finds himself trying to be the eternal optimist right in the middle of these two people that he actually cares about. And so I think it's season 3, it's towards the end of season 3, there's this moment where all of this is kind of coming to a head, all of this is really kind of hitting a fever pitch, and Ted kind of finds his way in this one moment where he shows a surveillance video of something that happened, and there's this back and forth and all this kind of stuff, and he looks at his assistant coach who's holding on to a grudge and holding on to a bunch of anger, and he looks at him and he starts to try and to poke him and say you need to forgive, and this is how he says it. He looks at his assistant coach and he says, I don't know about you, coach, but I hope either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather by the strength we show when and if we're given a second chance. I hope that either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but instead by the strength and courage that we show if and when we're given a second chance. It's interesting because when I was looking at today's gospel in particular, I find being that the central figure in today's gospel is really kind of Peter. He's kind of put on the hot seat today. This is a really, really important scripture during the course of the early church, especially because this is the moment where Peter's profession of faith becomes kind of the foundation that we build the entire teaching in the Catholic Church of the papacy on. Well, what we have is we have Peter who gives the right answer. But if we're honest with ourselves, and I think if we would be kind of objective in looking at Peter, Peter is somebody who would qualify by wanting to be defined by his best moments, not his weakest moments. Because Peter's weakest moments are big, and Peter's got a lot of them. I love St. Peter. St. Peter is one of my favorite saints because he gives me hope. He shows that we don't have to have perfect people in the clergy, thank God, because I would not be here. But that he's proof positive that we can have really, really strong, powerful, amazing moments followed by open mouth insert foot kind of moments. And Peter does it over and over and over again. If we look at just St. Peter, his call from the very beginning, of him showing up in the Gospels to the very end of him showing up in the Gospels, it's bookended with this kind of moment of him doing everything right and then being an idiot and doing everything wrong. From the very, very beginning, what we see is St. Peter, when he's called by Jesus on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, right? He's out fishing. They've been fishing all night. Jesus looks at him and says, go out for a catch, go into the deep water. Peter looks at him and says, we've been fishing all night. We haven't caught a thing. Jesus says, do it. But he says, okay, sure, I'll put my nets down for a catch. He pulls in this massive amount of fish. When he pulls in this massive amount of fish, he gets back to the shore. He looks at Jesus and he says, I want to follow you. Like wherever you're going. He leaves his nets, he leaves his livelihood, he leaves his identity as a fisherman on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and he starts to follow Jesus. And from then on, he's following Jesus. But if we bookend that with the very end of the gospel, what we see is that in John's gospel, right after Jesus resurrects, right after Jesus starts to do his different things, he starts to show up, and he's revealing himself to the apostles. What is it that Peter says? He's sitting with the apostles after the resurrection, and he says, hey, I'm going fishing. All that stuff we did over the last 3 years, great, wonderful, amazing, but I'm going back and pick up right where I left off. Like nothing ever happened. Jesus inserts himself into it, pulls off the same miracle, and looks at him and says, you're not done yet. Come on. You can't run away from this call. Follow me. You said you would. We're going to go back to that. He does the great moment. He does the amazing thing. He does the powerful thing. He does the thing that is like, it's hard to do. And then at the end of the gospel, he fumbles. He falls. He doesn't see it through. A couple of weeks ago, our gospel was Peter walking on the water. If you came to Mass, you heard the story of Peter walking on the water. Well, what happens there? Well, Peter is out in the boat. He's doing what he's supposed to. Jesus has sent him and the apostles ahead. As him and the apostles are ahead, it's the middle of the night. There's a storm going on. They see a ghost kind of figure walking across the water. And then somebody says, it's Jesus. And Peter is the one that kind of takes the lead. And he says, Lord, if it is you, then let me walk out on the water to you. And Jesus says, come. So whenever what does he do? He actually takes the step of faith and he walks on water. Let's not put that aside. This isn't like some kind of like a fever dream. He's actually walking across water. He steps out of a secure boat and walks on water like it's ground. He's a fisherman. He knows what you do when you fall out of a boat. You sink. He walks on water. Think of the moment of faith that took. But when we think of that story, a lot of times we think of the end of it where he starts to doubt, he starts to question, he starts to look at other stuff, and he sinks. Why did you doubt? Does the great, amazing thing, the strong thing, the virtuous thing, the miracle kind of thing, and then follows it up with the weak moment. Today's gospel is no different. Like Peter today, when Jesus looks at the apostles today, notice what he does. The first question Jesus asked to the apostles, he looks at the apostles and he says, who do people say that I am? Who do people say that the Son of Man is, right? He's trying to see what's kind of the feel, what's the gossip, what's the kind of reputation that's going on out and about with the people. And he says, who do the people say that the Son of Man is? And they all say different things. John the Baptist, Elijah, Jeremiah, another prophet. But then he pivots the question and he looks at the apostles and he says, but who do you say that I am? It's really easy to speak on behalf of everybody else, maybe what we've heard, what we think, what we've seen. But what do you think? And Peter's the one that speaks up. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You are the Messiah. You are the one who've been waiting for. You are the one that you are who you say you are. We are coming to believe that you are the second person of the Trinity, Jesus Christ. You are him. Peter gets the answer right. Strong moment. Powerful moment. Amazing moment. You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of the netherworld shall never prevail against her. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Like, it's amazing. It's an awesome, awesome moment, a profession of faith. And then 4 verses later, this is what we read. We'll kick off next week's gospel with this. This is the next few verses. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. He foretells the Paschal mystery. And Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But Jesus turned to Peter and said, Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not on the side of God, but of men. Peter went from getting the answer exactly right to saying exactly who Jesus was, pointing out his identity, showing this profession of faith, this powerful, powerful moment. You did everything right, and then followed it up with being an idiot. Get behind me, Satan. Strong moment. Open mouth, insert foot, weak moment. Peter shows us over and over and over again that he is not perfect. He's far from it. That's why I love Peter. The interesting thing is, though, is if we think about Peter and we think about his background, we think about like the characterization that we get of St. Peter, the characterization is first pope, leader of the apostles. We don't think about many of his screw-ups. You know, it was Peter and one other apostle that screwed up royally during Holy Week. We know what happens to Peter. Peter is the one that whenever Jesus is on trial, people start to look around and they start to look for his disciples, look for his followers, look for the 12 guys who was around him all the time. And they start to recognize, they say, no, I know you. You were with him. Oh, you were with him in the garden. I've seen you. I know you. You follow him. And over, he said over and over, no, hell no. And then a rooster crows. Peter runs away in shame. Because it was foretold at the Last Supper that Jesus said, before the rooster crows, before daybreak, you will deny me 3 times. And he does. The other apostle that does this, that messes up royally, is Judas. Judas sells the Son of God for what? A handful of coins. And he becomes known as a traitor. Peter is known as the Pope, leader of the apostles, and Judas screws up just as bad. And he's the traitor. I hope either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather by the strength we show when and if we're given a second chance. What's the difference between Peter and Judas? You ever thought about that? Peter and Judas both wrote, in Jesus' worst hour, in his most desperate hour, both of them completely abandon their post. What's the difference? Judas, when it comes to, when he's faced with it, when he's faced with his failures, it crushes him. When he's faced with his guilt, he tries to give the money back. It absolutely crushes him. He caves in on himself. He implodes. Because he can't take what he did. Judas's failure, it's something that's all consuming. He hides in it, but it becomes this cancer that just eats him up. He ends up committing suicide. Peter, on the other hand, when faced with his failure, when faced with his weakness, ends up going back to God. The biggest difference between the two is that Judas doesn't and Peter does seek out God's mercy. That Peter, in his failure, over and over and over again, repeatedly throughout the scriptures, Peter, in his failure, he allows the Lord to help him. He allows the Lord to fix him. He allows the Lord to correct him. He allows the Lord to heal him. He, again, whenever he fails in Jesus' darkest hour, goes back to God and he says, I'm sorry, I messed up. The way it sounds is, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know I love you. Do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. The 3 times he denied him are undone by the 3 I love yous. Every one of us, every single one of us have some Peter in us and some Judas in us. Every one of us have places that when we struggle, when we fail, we run to God. We run to seek him out. We run to ask him, Lord, I need your help. I need your healing. I need your grace. I need you to help me. I need you to fix this. I need you to work in these spots because I'm imperfect. I think every one of us knows that we are imperfect. But every one of us has a little bit of Judas in us too. Because there are spots in our life, there are spots in our heart, there are spots in our past, there are spots in our desires that we don't let God in. Whether for fear, whether for shame, whether they hurt, whatever it is, that we do not let God in. And that is off limits to even him. There's a story of Leonardo da Vinci when he was painting his masterpiece of The Last Supper. What he did is that he used models. He found people to be the faces for all of the apostles. It was a technique that he would do from time to time, where whenever he would paint the images, that he would use models and actual people. So when he was painting it, one of the things he did was he was looking for the different people and their faces. So actually, he was in mass one day in the cathedral in Milan, and he saw a young man singing in the choir loft. And when he saw him, he was like, "Oh, that's my Jesus." Just like the joy, the praise that was coming forward, just the way he looked, his facial structure, like all the things. He was just like, as an artist, he just said, that's my Jesus. Went up to the man after mass, asked him, said, hey, would you mind coming to my studio? Would bring him to the studio, talk to him, great, set him up, and he painted his face into the image. Story goes that as he was doing this, that for the next 11 months, he painted 11 of the different apostles, that as he was walking around maybe in the market or he was out in different places, that he would see somebody and he'd be like, that's my James, that's my Matthew, that's my John, that's my Peter, right? Like he would pick these different people out in crowds and he would ask them to come back and then they would sit down and he would paint them into the picture. The one person that he could not find was Judas. And he would search and he would search and he would search and he would spend hours and hours looking around at different crowds, at different people, walking around in the marketplace, going to different areas of the city, trying to find somebody that would be his Judas. He left the image undone for 11 years. Until one day he was walking through the marketplace and there he was. He said, that's him. That's my Judas. It was a young man that you could tell, he just like a face that kind of looked like it had been hardened by years. He kind of was walking slouched, a little bit gray, right? Like shoulders kind of forward. Just looked like he was like a little bit angry or depressed. He said, that's Judas. So he goes up to the young man. He explains to him what's going on. He invites him to the studio. He sits down. And as he's painting, about halfway through him painting, the young man starts to cry. I would be crying because he would ask me to be Judas, but that's a whole other thing. But he starts to cry, and Da Vinci looked at him and said, "What? Is everything okay? Have I offended you? You sure you're fine?" He says, "Master, do you not recognize me?" And Da Vinci said, "I'm sorry, I don't." He said, "I was here 11 years ago. You painted me as Christ." Every one of us have the capacity to reveal forth The Spirit of God, Jesus. Every one of us has the capacity to reflect forward, right? The mercy, the grace, the power of God in our lives. And every one of us has the capacity to shine forward Judas, something that's contrary. The difference is us receiving the mercy of God, allowing him to transform us, and then reflecting it out. Peter was not the Pope. He was not the leader of the apostles because he was perfect. Far from it. Repeatedly in Scripture we see that. But he knew he was weak. He knew he needed Jesus. And he allowed him to work. That's the call for each one of us as Christians. Do we recognize our weakness? And do we allow the Lord to work? As we come to Mass tonight, God floods our life with his grace again. Are we open to receive it? And are we willing to cooperate with it? And tonight, the parts of our life that are hidden and dark and quarantined off from God, may they be open so that the Lord can lead us, transform us, and reflect his presence forward.